Thank you very much, and very pleased to be here, especially as I work in the institute right next to the dock where the Titanic sailed from. So she was fine when she left Southampton, she was fine when she left here. So let's see how we can move on today. Well, the first photograph I've got there is of a US manufactured ocean glider. And that is one area where in Europe, the UK and the rest of our partners, we're using these things, but we don't yet build them. So there's a challenge for any engineering consultancies out there. When are we going to be able to buy a European-made ocean glider? Now, just over 3 weeks ago, we were delighted to launch our new research ship. She's a very beautiful new ship, just under 100 meters long, named like her predecessor, Discovery. If she lasts as long as the last Discovery, the taxpayer will receive over 50 years of service out of her. But as beautiful as she is, these things are very, very expensive to build, and they're very, very expensive to run. This ship cost us about £73 million. She'll give many, many years of service, and she'll do fantastic science. But there's this huge challenge. How do we try and bring that cost down to be able to obtain the measurements that we need? I mean, there's no doubting the ships are incredibly capable. You don't need to read all of these, but this is just a summary of the kind of things that we can do with the Discovery and her sister, James Cook. We can operate the ROVs, we can hover in one place, get right down to those mid-ocean ridges and take fantastic high-resolution images of the vents. We can use our winch systems, we have the labs, we can take students away. There's all kinds of fantastic stuff you can do. But you're looking at £25,000, £30,000 a day just to put the fuel in these things. How can you get that cost down and the observations up? The satellites obviously do a fantastic job if you're looking at that top micron of the ocean, or if you're looking at large ocean circulation patterns. But if you want to get down deep, how do you get there? Now, this image, this is yesterday's count of how many Argo floats are currently at sea, 3,605. Fantastically successful international program. These things are, as you can see on the map, operating all over the world, but they have their limitations. They're not very good over shelf seas. They tend to prefer deep water. You can't make them go places. They'll only go where the ocean current is going to take them, and they're not much use under ice. But nonetheless, Argo has filled in a huge number of gaps in our knowledge and vast quantities of data we couldn't have obtained in any other way. So here's one of our research ships, the James Clark Ross, trying to work our way through, in this case, I think it's the Greenland ice sheet. Autonomous floats are great, but they can't surface to transmit back the data once you get down to these kind of places. So I'm very briefly going back in time here. When I first joined the Institute back in 1990, there was a very dynamic individual, John Woods, very much in charge of UK marine science at the time. And he commissioned a series of cartoons back in the days when we used to have an institute artist. And she painted these things with this idea of, wouldn't it be great if we could build a device that you could just set it off and off it would go and make the measurements and transmit the data back to a shore base. That one, I think, was called Dolphin, which was a deep ocean long path hydrographic instrument. And that was the same artist's impression, where the UK has disappeared under several feet of ice in that particular one, I think. But they've been watching The Day After Tomorrow. And this one was the other concept, a DOGI, which was the Deep Ocean Geophysical and Geological Instrumented Explorer. So these are the kind of things they were talking about back in the late 80s and early 90s. This is what we wanted to do, even back then. But we weren't the first off the blocks. I understand we have Canadian visitors today, and the Canadians, I'm sure, are very aware that they were the first. These guys, this is the Theseus machine, built by ISC over on the west coast of Canada. Now, this particular autonomous underwater vehicle wasn't actually built as a research instrument or as an explorer. It was built to lay telephone cables, and it did a really, really good job. It was basically a large drum inside the body with a large spool of fiber optic cable, and the machine was used to go around the coastline of an icebound part of Canada, deploying the cable as it went and then hooking up the shoreside communities. But it showed what could be done. You could put in an inertial navigation system, you could operate safely under ice for considerable periods of time, and deliver a payload. In this case, telephone cables, but it could be gathering data. There are obviously military applications. There are all kinds of things you can do with this kind of device. So the race was on. And by 1997, we had the Mark I version of our AutoSub vehicle ready for use. And here she is alongside the dock. In its earliest incarnation, AutoSub was powered by torch batteries, 3,600 D cells. So we should have painted it gold and black, or dressed it in a little fluffy bunny suit or something, and maybe got some sponsorship. But even with those 3,600 batteries, we could get over 800 kilometers range. We could dive to 1,600 meters and gather a terrific amount of data. So whilst we were working on AutoSub, Kongsberg and Simrad were working on their Hugin device. This has been a very successful autonomous vehicle. It's in use both as a mine hunter and as a surveying piece of equipment used throughout industry for things like pipeline monitoring and surveillance. Over in Denmark, Maridon came up with their Martin AUV. Interesting early customer for this one was De Beers, the diamond mining company, who were very interested in looking for diamond deposits in shallow water deposits off the west coast of Africa. And by buying an autonomous vehicle, they could go around and explore these shallow sediments without their commercial competitors seeing where exactly they were surveying for diamonds. So very effective vehicle, and still in use as a survey tool. So here's AutoSub on one of its early deployments in Antarctica. In this particular photograph, the ship has moved alongside, and as the hull has got close to the vehicle, it's pushed that thin veneer of ice aside. So you get those nice little grooves where the antennae have penetrated that thin layer at the surface. And what AutoSub let us do in Antarctica and off Greenland was to put a vehicle down under completely uncharted waters, places where you wouldn't really want to put a manned submersible. It might hit a seamount or a rock that doesn't show up anywhere. AutoSub could get under there, take the measurements. We made some, even in the early days, we made some quite radical discoveries about life cycle of krill and plankton distributions underneath the ice caps. Unfortunately, the Mark II vehicle is a temporary resident of Antarctica. I wouldn't say it's lost because we know exactly where it is. It's about 17 kilometers under the edge of the ice, and it's got various people's telephone numbers and emails written on top of it. So eventually, as the ice melts, we'll get the Mark II vehicle back. But we're several versions on now, and we learned a lot from that particular experience. So there's a shot of there's the Mark III. The sort of Gatling gun type arrangement are the cases where we keep the batteries and the electronics. The much smaller cylinder on the floor next to it is, without its wings, one of our Slocum gliders. So it gives an idea of the relative size of glider technology versus the large autonomous vehicles. And of course, there's a very great difference in price. A full-grown AutoSub would be running at anything up to $1 million, whereas you could probably buy the Slocum glider for, say, $30,000. So there's quite a big difference in the price of the vehicle classes, but you're buying very, very different. There's tremendous difference capability from one versus the other. So AutoSub since then has progressed. This was the AutoSub 6000. Instead of running on torch batteries, we're up to giant mobile phone batteries in this particular one. 6 large lithium-ion power packs. Doesn't have quite the range of the older vehicle, but this one's able to dive to 6,000 meters. And we've been using this repeatedly in places like the Cayman Trough, fitting it with cameras, obtaining broadcast quality video footage of the deep hydrothermal vent activity. We've also been able to fit it with sonar systems and bottom mapping instrumentation for charting, the deep sea floor in Antarctica, off the Falkland Islands, and lots of other places where to use a traditional ship would either be very expensive or it could be quite dangerous in ice-covered waters. Little photograph there. Some of you might recognise Gwyn Griffiths, who retired recently, who was very much the driver behind a lot of our autonomous programs. The vehicle they're with there is one of our Slocum glider fleet. Again, these are made in the United States. They're not made in the UK or in Europe, but it's become a very successful vehicle and is almost the standard. Rutgers University, the students, shows how simple these things are to operate. Excellent student team conducted the first complete transatlantic crossing with one of these vehicles they called Red Knight just a couple of years ago. And if you look up Rutgers Red Knight glider on YouTube, there's some wonderful videos of the students controlling this thing across the Atlantic and the reception at the end of it. Their next stage, Rutgers intend to do a complete circumnavigation of the world using these gliders, kicking off some point next year. So there's the fleet. That's the Southampton fleet with the former Minister Richard Benyon inspecting them. So you've got AutoSub 3 on the right of the photograph. That's our sort of torch battery powered reliable vehicle we tend to use for the under ice work. Next to that, the AutoSub 6000, so rated to 6,000 meters depth, about 400 or 500 kilometers range with that one, so not quite as long as the older vehicle. And then the much smaller one on the ground with the covers off is our latest vehicle, which is AutoSub LR for long range. And this thing's terrific. We're aiming for 6,000 kilometers range out of AutoSub LR. And it does it by basically using a very, very low speed and very, very low energy systems. It will be running from mobile phone processors rather than a Unix workstation, for example. But it means that you can get this low energy consumption, very, very long range capability. Now, while we've been working on all that stuff, the UK government has become very, very keen on very much the same concept. And we had our Chancellor, George Osborne, talking about the future technologies where the UK can be world leading. He specifically included robotics and autonomous systems. And our Science Minister, David Willetts, under his 8 Great Technologies initiative, has also been targeting marine robotic systems as being critical to the cost-effective routine mapping and monitoring of oceans and seas. At the same time, we're having industry coming to Southampton, as well as the ministers, sort of saying, right, you guys have now got close on 20 years experience of operating these systems. You really ought to be a kind of focal point of this kind of work. And here's David Willetts visiting NOC just a few weeks ago, and he's very, very keen in what we're up to. So how are we moving forward on our marine autonomous systems? Well, in that graph there, you'll see the spend in 2012 versus 2015 in millions, this is pounds sterling, on procurement of autonomous systems in the UK. So for starters, in this financial year, we've been upgrading our AutoSub fleet. We're buying 2 more of the AutoSub long-range vehicles. We're upgrading our Slocum gliders. And for the first time, we're moving into long-endurance surface vehicles as well, which will be a new departure for us. Over the next couple of years, we have another 10 million to invest. We're going to be buying more wave gliders, more of the Slocum series, and some of the Kongsberg Sea Glider series. We probably will be building another 2 or 3 AutoSub long ranges as well, but optimized for shallow water operations, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. So at NOC, the use of these autonomous systems has moved from being a paper exercise into the real world. We're already doing this work, and we're finding them very, very effective. Particularly the AutoSub long range, we're confident it's now a mature technology. It's been many years since we lost one. We haven't lost any of the AutoSub long range series yet. A good indication of that is the insurance industry will insure these things now. You know, if you went to them a few years ago and said, "Hi, I've got an autonomous system and I'd like you to insure it," they'd have quoted you a premium pretty much the same as the value of the vehicle. Now they're sufficiently confident, you'll typically get quoted a premium of about 10% of the value of the vehicle, which shows that these guys are pretty confident you're not going to lose it. We're working on a shallow water version of AutoSub long range, which will be optimized for monitoring test sites for carbon capture and storage. So, you know, if you're pumping this carbon down into deep sea geological storage, the places where that carbon might seep back out into the ocean, you know, very, very widespread. It's quite difficult to monitor with a fixed mooring system or, you know, a fixed series of sensors, whereas you can have an AutoSub running a sort of racetrack pattern around the entire site for months on end, monitoring it, looking for any signs of leakage and reporting it back. We're looking at AutoSub-based observatories, again replacing a traditional mooring with a single vehicle which is able to orbit you know, in a particular area for weeks or months on end. We're working very closely with our department for the environment to use AutoSub as one of the tools for compliance with the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. Many of you will be aware, you know, this new directive. We have these 11 areas which we have to monitor to demonstrate good environmental status by 2020, and AutoSub will be an important part of the UK's monitoring programme, you know, for achieving good environmental status. With industry and with the British Geological Survey, we're collaborating on the MARIMAP programme, again using AutoSub to help map the seafloor around the UK. We're moving on to a new generation of sensors. We've been working on lab-on-a-chip technology for quite a long time, putting these things on the gliders. We're also putting them on Argo floats, working very strongly now on the power optimization side of things to try and make them last as long as possible, but also facing the challenge of biofouling. One of the problems you'll all find if you're going to deploy autonomous vehicles for weeks or months on end is how do you keep the sensor clean? You haven't got a technician who can, you know, take the barnacles off or, you know, clean out the water intakes. So it's quite a technical challenge. How do you keep the sensors stable and functional for long periods of time? Trying to get the vehicles to work together is also proving to be a little bit of a challenge. You know, we'd like them all to talk to one another in a fairly seamless manner. You know, we're gradually making good progress on that. So with this sort of target for ship-free sustained observations, we're already now investing in the gliders, the AutoSub long range, the surface vehicles. And the big challenges, apart from biofouling, remain, first of all, power. If you're on a ship or you're on a surface-based autonomous vehicle which perhaps can carry a diesel engine, you don't really have any problem with the amount of power that's available to operate the instruments. You could, for example, do seismic work, you know, with an unmanned system that had plenty of power, but you can't possibly do that with the current generation of vehicles. You'll burn up all of their batteries in no time at all. Reliability, obviously, absolutely key. You know, if the thing breaks down every 6 weeks, it's no good to man or beast. Piloting issues, a little bit less of an extent, but a very, very big one is legal issues. Now, particularly for autonomous surface vehicles. If you're going to start sending a robot off into international shipping lanes, you've got to be pretty sure you've got a good collision avoidance system. You need to have made sure that you can address the collision at sea regulations. How do you keep a lookout? How do you address the safety of life at sea regs? What's your porter registry? You know, there are an awful lot of pieces of legislation which have evolved over the last century or more, aimed at how you safely operate surface ships. And you can't just, build a dirty, great robot, stick it in the middle of the ocean and say, off you go, and assume you're not going to get any troubles. If you hit anything and you haven't addressed these things, you're going to be in pretty big trouble. The other area, and this is where my Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission hat comes in, is gaining permission from other states to let an autonomous vehicle into their waters. Under the current UN Convention on Law of the Sea, you are, of course, allowed to do marine scientific research in other people's territorial waters. You have to apply for permission to enter those waters. And quite often, the sovereign state will say, certainly, you're very welcome to come and investigate, and we'd like to place an observer on your ship. Now, if your ship is a 7-metre-long robot, which has no intention of going anywhere near the surface, it's jolly difficult to stick an observer on board. We've already had problems with some sovereign states basically saying to us, you can send down your traditional survey ship, but there's no way you're deploying an autonomous system in our territorial waters. We don't know what you're looking at. We've got no way to ensure you're complying with regulations. How do we know you're not just doing the work on behalf of the Royal Navy or something? So this is an issue. And as you can imagine, National Oceanography Centre, we operate a lot in the South Atlantic. Argentina get pretty upset if we suggest putting autonomous systems into the ocean anywhere near the Falkland Islands or the western half of the Southern Ocean. So legal issues are a real deal, and they do need to be addressed. So there's a couple more shots there of Autosub long range. I mean, it's quite a short, squat little beast, but very effective. The sharp-eyed will notice it even has a single-bladed propeller. That's the kind of extremes the engineers have gone to try and reduce the drag and the power consumption with this vehicle. As I mentioned, we're now moving into the world of surface autonomous vehicles. And here's the first of the ones we're buying, a little company called Most AVCom. They're Autonaut, they call it, and it's basically got a foils fore and aft, like little hydrofoils, and it moves along. Is that something? Oops, there we go. Thanks. The Autonaut works essentially by wave power. It has a very long endurance. We're hoping for 6 months plus. The manufacturers won't let me show you a picture with the foils because they say it's all still subject to patent and such like. So I had to carefully crop the foils off fore and aft in this particular illustration. It's not very big, but it's quite effective. You get an idea of how small the vehicle is here. Now, hopefully this one's sufficiently small that were it to hit an inhabited ship, it's not going to cause too much damage, and we'll certainly be undertaking sea trials with these very, very shortly. The other design we're buying, made by a company called ASV. You have the artist's impression in the top there, and the real vehicle under construction shown on the bottom of the image. I'm not sure how long the wind turbine would survive in real ocean wave conditions, but I'm told by the manufacturers they're very, very confident that she can survive quite well on solar power. And this vehicle will optionally be fitted with a small marine diesel as well, so we're able to transit to the area we want to investigate quite quickly. It will be able to stay on station for months at a time. Beautiful kind of device if you're wanting to measure surface water conditions out to several hundred miles offshore. It's a very effective system, and I suspect that if this works, we'll be buying quite a few more of this kind of device over the next few years. So that was a model on the aft end of Discovery the other day. So Discovery may well be the last conventional research ship the UK buys of that class. It could well be that future deployments will be from smaller, less expensive vessels, or using ships in the private sector that we're able to deploy these systems from. I just wanted to mention too that it's not just us at NOC and the manufacturers. There's a very, very important role played by others, in this world. The learned societies and professional bodies in the UK have been a very, very important part of enabling autonomous systems to happen. The likes of Society for Underwater Technology and IMREST have been the people who've been writing the technical publications. They've been doing the user workshops. They've been bringing the people together so that people from different laboratories and different institutes can learn the lessons of how to use an autonomous vehicle, how do you deploy them in heavy sea states, how do you get around the lawyers, how do you get them insured. All of those kind of things are quite often very well addressed through these learned societies and professional bodies, which have the extra advantage that they're international, and so they're able to spread that knowledge across the community. We're beginning to see the trade bodies move forward and supporting the sector. So we have people like the Association of Marine Industries and the Shipbuilders Federations. So they are all sort of realizing that autonomous vehicles are very much part of that next wave, and so they're beginning to invest as well. And we've seen the first example this year of support services from overseas migrating to where these critical masses of autonomous vehicles are. So, for example, Teledyne Ryan from the States have just opened a service and repair facility in the UK to be able to change the batteries and service the gliders and the floats because they've realised these things are here to stay and that people are going to be buying many, many more of these systems, and they don't want to have to send them back to Massachusetts just for a battery change. So I'm just about done there. So I'd conclude by saying that autonomous systems are very much here to stay. They're going to get a lot smarter and much more capable. The legal, insurance and regulatory systems have to evolve to keep pace with the technology, and that's particularly in the case of the surface vehicles. We're moving much faster than the legal and regulatory system is at the moment. We can already put systems at sea that would greatly transgress international maritime law, both in their capability and the kind of things they can measure. I'll give you an example, Argo floats. Many of you will have used Argo floats. They usually just measure your basic suite of temperature, salinity, and a few things like that. The technology is already there to put a great deal more capability onto an Argo float, but as soon as that system floats into somebody else's territorial waters, you're in trouble, because the sovereign state would probably turn around and say, we'll let you measure the temperature and salinity, but you're not measuring anything else. Where's the off switch? Now, we've already had this situation of experimental, highly instrumented floats drifting into waters of countries like Indonesia, and the state saying, you must switch off that system. We haven't given you permission to detect anything other than a basic suite. So we have to think about these things. So the momentum is building. And Europe is in the lead in many respects at the moment. We really are leading the world in this move towards autonomy, except for gliders. Hence my little plea at the beginning. Where's the European manufacturer of gliders? We're not doing that there. So we're already in the lead. It would be really good if we don't lose it. And I'm very pleased that we do have some of our friends from across the Atlantic here today, because there's a real critical mass, particularly through working with Atlantic Canada, to be able to get these systems into the ocean, to be able to start measuring the Atlantic to a far greater degree of accuracy and regularity than we've ever been able to do before. So I'll stop it there.